Life Management Science Labs would like to acknowledge that we live and produce this podcast on the traditional lands of the Wurundjeri people. We'd also like to acknowledge the traditional owners of the lands of our listeners and our international colleagues. We'd like to pay our respects to their elders, past, present, and emerging. Hi, and welcome to Self-Improvement Atlas, the Personal Science Insights podcast produced by LMSL, the Life Management Science Labs. We are champions of life management science, providing structured insights informed by science and inspired by practice on key aspects of conscious living. Each week, we bring you scientific and practical insights on each element with the expert knowledge of professionals in the field. I'm Marie Stella, your host from Melbourne, Australia. Let's start the show. Welcome back to Self-Improvement Atlas, the Personal Science Insights podcast. Prioritizing health in our mile-a-minute days can feel like an impossible task. Between work, family, social obligations, and personal interests, we're often left feeling drained and out of sync with our own well-being. Yet it remains all the more crucial for us to treat our health as a priority. So in this episode, we're joined by health coach Sharon Gleeson for some expert advice and insights. Embodying a holistic approach in her health coaching practices, Sharon believes that health extends beyond eating and exercising into stress management, sleep, self-care, as well as mindsets. So we're extremely fortunate to have her guiding us through this topic today. Hi, Sharon. It's lovely having you on the show. How are you going?
Hi, Marie. Great. Thank you. And thanks so much for the opportunity to be a part of your show. I'm really excited.
Yeah, it's a pleasure to have you on the show. So I'm really curious to know, before we get started, in your line of work, what's the most common problem your clients come to you with?
Usually, there's a lot of problems, but probably lack of energy would be the one thing. I think people are, we're overstretched, as you said, overworked, and people are tired and they're looking for more energy.
Mhm. Yeah, that's a great introduction to our topic for today. I myself feel like I often experience that problem. That's a very common struggle amongst me and my friends who are trying to lead a healthier lifestyle, but work just stretches us way too thin. As on top of life admin as well. But before we get further into detail, I love to get to know you better. This is Have You Met Sharon Gleeson? My first question for you is, what do you like to do in your spare time?
I mean, I love the outdoors. So I love the beach. I love stand-up paddleboarding. I swim. I'm a huge AFL fan, so follow Carlton, love watching sport. I also really love catching up with friends. I know it probably sounds soft and vague, but really do enjoy spending time with friends, whether that's doing something like a walk or some activities together, eating out. Really love socializing.
And is there an activity that you enjoy doing with your friends in particular?
I do. We often do walks and then have breakfast or coffee or something. So that's the sort of thing that I really enjoy doing. And if it can be near the water. So this morning I just went for a walk by the river with a friend. We just grabbed a takeaway and had a walk and talked just instead of sitting around. And I think that's one thing I try to do is try and make sure that my catch-ups, where possible, can involve movement. It might be going out with friends and we'll bring the stand-up paddle boards and we'll go and do that. So I love incorporating movement into our catch-ups when we can.
Oh yeah, going for a promenade's always very nice. So it's great to hear that you have such a slew of hobbies and activities that you enjoy doing. But is there any chance that you also keep up to date with movies, books, films, or TV shows at all?
I do love reading, although I must admit I've really relied a lot on Audible lately. So I love listening to books. So that's a really big thing for me is I've always got a book on the go in the car. Sometimes I'll do a walk and I'll be listening to a podcast or a book, but sometimes I also will go for a walk without that just to have that opportunity for some downtime and to decompress. I do love
Yeah.
movies, bit of a sucker for the romantics. Although I love the movie Blindside. And I do love listening to podcasts. I think they're such a great way to take in new information and always be getting current information.
It's completely fair that you use Audible. I mean, I should probably get on that. I feel like I haven't quite maximized the potential of my Amazon subscription at all. And every time I hear some of my friends talk about the latest book that they've read, this interesting book with all of this research. I'm like, what time do you have? Like, how do you find the time to read this entire book? And it always ends up being an audiobook. And I'm like, oh, I should probably get on that. So what books have you been enjoying recently?
I absolutely love, and I always recommend to my clients, Atomic Habits. And I really love The Compound Effect by Darren Hardy. At the moment, I'm listening to the 21 Irrefutable Laws of Leadership by John Maxwell. I'm a huge John Maxwell fan. I do love reading books about leadership. I love things like that. The books Atomic Habits and The Compound Effect, I think, really do give people some good skills that they can use in any aspect of their life. Like, they've been really life-changing books for me. I love Jack Canfield as well. So The Success Principles is another one of his that I really enjoy. So, yeah, a wide range. I love Brené Brown as well. So, yeah, lots of different books that I love to read. But I don't actually ever read. I'm always reading personal development books. I don't read books for enjoyment. I'll do that one day in retirement.
And what would you say are some of the biggest takeaways that you've gotten from these books?
I think certainly learning skills to lead, because, you first got to lead yourself before you can, especially in the work that I do, there's, coaching others. So I think it's leading yourself, but also leading other people, leading a team, even as a mum. Like, there's great things that you learn from a leadership book that you can apply to being a parent. But certainly Atomic Habits and The Compound Effect were life-changing books for me. And I think certainly with the clients that I work with, the things that they teach in those books is really about what I talk to my clients about, is the fact that, it's small things. It's the little things that we do daily that add up and make a difference. That when we want to make a change, it's a mistake a lot of people make, is we try and change everything all at once too fast. And of course, that's difficult to do and therefore difficult to sustain. And so they actually teach you how to build habits. And I think one of the big things I find, like, a lot of people say, oh, I need to be eating more healthy, or I need to be drinking more water, or I need to start a meditation practice. And they have these good intentions, but we're often busy and we don't figure out how exactly to get that to go from intention to building that as a habit, so to action, and then it becoming a habit, that it's something that you just do on autopilot. So certainly Atomic Habits and The Compound Effect I found extremely helpful for myself personally, but also being able to share some of those concepts with clients as well to really help them to actually make change.
Yeah, those sound like really inspiring books. So thank you so much for sharing that. Now, my last question for you before we end off this section is there a role model that you look up to either in your professional life or your personal life?
Um, there's always both. I've got some personal coaches and mentors, and look, to be honest, mentorship is probably, I believe, one of the most incredible gifts that you can ever receive. So I have, but if I said their names, you wouldn't know them. But they're people that I've worked with over my career and maintained long-term relationships. So I always have my own coaching and mentoring sessions built in. I suppose I look up to the people that I read their books. So someone like Brené Brown, I think, is incredible. John Maxwell, Jack Canfield, who are incredible leaders and have that real servant heart leadership. Kemi Nekvapil, I'm not sure if you're familiar with her. She is an incredible woman, incredible leader. And I think when I sort of reflected on this question, the people that I look up to are usually people who are leaders who love helping other people, but they've got that real burning desire to make a difference in other people's lives.
Yeah, I feel like some of that also, you carry some of that with you as well in your health coaching practice. When I was reading up your website, I was thinking this is such a unique approach to health coaching. And I definitely see all of what you've just shared with me come through in your practice. So that is admirable in itself. And it's been such a pleasure getting to know you. Now we move on to the interview section. And the first question I have for you is, how would you define personal development?
It's interesting. So I often talk about personal growth. So I think when I was thinking about this, I sort of see personal development as the vehicle to help you to grow personally. So for me, it's always about new experiences. It's about reflecting on those experiences and thinking, what can I learn? How can I use this to grow? So it's really coming from that lens of wanting to learn and grow and become the best version of yourself. And I know that some people talk about having that sort of growth mindset where you're open to take on new challenges, to seeing that if you try something and it doesn't work, and I talk to my clients a lot about this, is if you try something and it doesn't work, it doesn't mean it's a failure. Like I say there's no such thing as failure. It's only learning. It's only a failure if you don't learn something from it. So to me, I think it's having that mindset of everything that I do is an opportunity for me to learn something and for me to grow and to become the best version of myself. And so for me, I guess just in line with what I talked about with habits, is I've now built a morning practice where I actually include personal development as part of my morning routine, so that I do actually allocate that time to reading and reflecting and journaling and growing. When I'm in my car, I've always got the first thing I do before I built it as a habit before I reverse out of the driveway is I put on the audiobook that I want to listen to. I build in regular coaching and mentoring sessions that, again, it's allocating and prioritizing that time to help me to learn and grow as well.
Yeah, I feel like that's a fantastic way of looking at a lot of things in life. And it just makes you feel, it gives you more fulfillment as well out of the things that you do in life, whether it's something that you deem a success or failure. What?
That's the biggest
What
challenge
was
that
I
my clients
saying?
face. Because
Yeah,
as you
I'm
said in the
definitely
intro, we're
resetting.
often so busy trying to keep all the balls in the air, whether
Yeah.
that's working,
Okay. I remember what I was
some people are
saying.
working and studying. It might be, family, running a household, life admin. I loved how you called it that. But unfortunately
That's
for
such
a
a
lot of people, the
fantastic way
health ball
of
is the
looking
one
at it
that
as well,
seems to get
whether you
dropped
deem
first.
something
Everything and
that
everyone
you've done
else
in
is
your
more
life a
important.
success or
And
failure.
unfortunately,
At least you've
the
learned something
health
and it
things,
gives
whether
you
that's
that
exercise or
fulfillment and meaning in
self-care
life
or
as well.
taking,
So
I used to do it. I was guilty of this. I would make healthy breakfast and lunches for my kids and I'd run out the door with no breakfast. So again, it was that making everyone else a priority and not myself. But really, it's a thing that we should be prioritizing the most because it underpins everything. When we're taking that time for self-care, and I talk about self-care in looking after ourselves physically and mentally, and it's little things like taking time to eat a healthy breakfast or lunch rather than skipping meals, or committing that time to going in and getting whatever sort of movement or exercise in that you love, prioritizing sleep or making that time for self-care, even if it's just a few minutes. When we do that, everything else runs better. We're much more productive at work because we're focused. Relationships are better because we're more calm, we're not so tired and grumpy, we're more resilient, and it improves our relationships. Like when we're feeling better in ourselves, we feel more energized, more confident, more happy when we are taking that time to prioritize ourselves. And I mean, that's obviously the short-term benefit, like just on the day-to-day. But I think the other big thing that I see is really important is that if we can create those healthy habits when we're younger or when we're at any time in our lives, really, you can't change the past, but you can always start where you are and change the future at any point. If we can actually incorporate those healthy habits, we can really prevent longer-term health issues. And unfortunately, I find that a lot of people are in that survival mode and they're not necessarily thinking about what's the trajectory that the habits that I've got in place right now putting me on. And I think I remember hearing somewhere someone saying, show me your habits and I'll show you where you'll be in 5 years. And I thought that's actually a pretty good way of looking at it. So I believe that really making those conscious choices to integrate even small, I think people make the mistake of thinking, oh, it's got to be a big thing that I do. But even if you've only got a few minutes, do a few minutes to move your body more or spend time doing some breathing exercises, anything, even just those small, little, what might seem like insignificant health practices, they can actually help us to mitigate the risks. So I think people often think a healthy lifestyle means big change, but those simple habits can be quite seamlessly integrated into our daily routines when you decide that it's important and you figure out how to fit it into your unique lifestyle. And that can lead to those sustainable improvements in our health and well-being.
hmm And are there any instances where people have incorporated some of the small changes into their lifestyle, but from there have kind of just plateaued and remained stagnant and not really growing their health practices? Is that an issue?
I think it can be an issue for a lot of people. I think we can at lots of times in our lives get stuck, or particularly people who love lots of change, for example, they might start on their health journey and they might start doing something and love it for a while, whether that's exercise. For a lot of people, it might be that they love their meditation practice or journaling, and then they can get to a point where it feels like it's getting boring or tedious. So that's a signal to change it up. And for some people, like I'm a bit of a creature of habit. Like I quite like some things of my life to be quite consistent, but some people like lots of change. And I think the big thing is like really tuning into you and what makes you tick. What do you like? When a lot of people that I work with, for example, struggle with exercise and movement, and I actually see them as quite two separate things. Exercise is one thing, but we also need to be moving our bodies. You can't just go to the gym for 45 minutes and then not move all day. And I say to them, like, figure out what is it that you enjoy? Like, what did you used to love doing when you were younger? Whether that's, some people, like, they love competition, so they love doing something that's competitive. For other people, it might be they love trying lots of different things. And so if you try and stick with the one thing, that will cause you to become stale and stagnant, and they will plateau. So it's knowing what are the things that motivate you that are going to actually cause you to want to keep on going with it. So I actually always talk to people when I finish with coaching them is, how can we set you up for success to maintain, I call it your persistent strategy. What is it that's going to keep you doing these things so that you don't plateau? Because again, we need to think about that stuff because people get bored. Sometimes life interrupts us. We might go on a big trip or we get sick and they stop, and those things can cause people to plateau. So it's always thinking ahead and thinking, how can I be ready and what will I do when this thing happens?
Yeah. And you mentioned it previously that one of the biggest challenges amongst your clients is the lack of energy when it comes to trying to incorporate health practices into their hectic schedule. So, what advice do you have for overcoming that or with facing that?
I think the first thing is looking at how is that affecting you now? Because I believe that to actually make a change, people need to decide to see why it's going to be important. Like, why would I spend my time doing this thing? Or because we've only got so much time and we've got to choose how we use that time. So if someone's struggling with their energy levels, I would ask them, like, how is that affecting you right now? What's it stopping you doing? How's it showing up in your life? And usually when people start to think about the impact and what it's stopping them from doing or how it's affecting them, they're more motivated to actually do something about it. And then it's really exploring. There's a few, with energy, there's quite a few things. It can be, maybe it's lack of sleep. It might be that they're not getting out and moving their body, and so those good endorphins aren't going. It might be that they're skipping breakfast, or maybe they don't understand how to eat to fuel their bodies. Like I find a lot of people think that because they're eating food and they feel full, that's enough. But people don't understand enough about food and how to use it to fuel their body to maintain their energy levels throughout the day. Even something as simple as water, like it's something most people know they should be doing, but for a lot of people, they don't even realise the impact that maybe just slight dehydration can have on energy levels. So it's really starting to look at someone's day, figure out what the gaps might be, and then starting to work on, sometimes people might say, and I find with a lot of people that I work with, because they are burnt out and struggling with energy, sometimes everything needs changing. But if you try and change everything all at once, if it's, I need more movement, I've got to be drinking more water, I need to be eating better, I need to be getting more sleep, you try and do all of that, they just won't do it because it's too big. So I always say to people, let's pick one thing. What do we feel like is going to be the biggest needle mover right now for your energy levels? And we start with that. And what people need is that first win. They need to make a change and go, oh, wow, that actually worked. I feel a bit better. And because they feel better, then it's, okay, well, now let's work on the next thing. And so for me, it's about scaffolding the habits rather than trying to make big changes all at once. So that's how I would approach someone with energy is, how's it impacting you? What would you really love? And let's look at what you're doing now and where we should start.
So, what are some examples of dietary changes that could really benefit energy levels?
I think one of the big things I'd say before I answer that is that we've really overcomplicated food, and it's actually really simple. So the biggest thing is a lot of people I find skip breakfast, and to be honest, I used to be one of those. So the first thing is making sure that you're eating a good breakfast. Eating 3 good meals a day is a really important step. Like a lot of people skip meals. So that's the first step, is making sure that you're eating 3 good meals a day. The second biggest thing is making sure that you're including protein with every meal. So I read a stat the other day that 6 out of 7 Australians aren't getting enough protein. And if you can get that protein in with breakfast, that makes a huge difference to your day. So, I teach people a really simple way of how to fill their plate. But one thing that you could do right now is make sure with your breakfast, with your lunch and with your dinner, that 1/4 of that plate is made up of lean protein, because protein burns slower than carbohydrates. So it's going to help you to feel fuller for longer, which is going to help you maintain your energy levels throughout the day. Whereas when we're eating carbs, and look, I think there's a couple of myths out there too I'd love to smash right now. One is a lot of people think, I can't eat carbs, they'll make me fat. Carbs are our body's first source of energy, so they're really important, but we need to be eating the right sort of carbs, so more your complex carbohydrates that are that slower burn. So your whole grains, things like brown rice, sweet potato, those sorts of things. And we need to be eating them in the right proportion. So it's all about how we fill our plate and getting the right proportion of the carbs on the plate, because our body needs them for energy. If we don't eat any carbs, then our body actually starts using protein for energy, and we actually need protein for all of our body's other really, really important functions, which I won't go into. The other one is fat. Like, again, a lot of people, depending on what era you were brought up in, I was definitely brought up in that era of don't eat fat, fat will make you fat, low fat. And all the low fat was filled with sugars and things, to bulk it out and make it taste good. So we do need, again, it's choosing the right fats. So healthy fats, avocado, olive oil, seeds, your oily fish, those sorts of things, because that's the densest form of energy. So if you can fill your plate with half your plate, your non-starchy vegetables and fruits, 1/4 of your plate, your lean protein, and the other 1/4 made up of your healthy carbs and your healthy fats, that is how you can really eat to maintain your energy levels. So I eat like that, and I virtually don't snack at all during the day.
Amazing. I really hope to get there one day too. Thank you for bringing me through that. That was incredibly detailed. Now, with the overall health habits that we should be trying to develop and establish, how would you recommend structuring our daily or weekly schedule to accommodate both work and all of our personal health needs?
So that's often the biggest one, is because people are busy, they don't schedule it in. And I always say to people, what gets scheduled gets done. So really the first thing is, and I actually do an exercise with people where I get them to put in all the things that are their not negotiables, and then we look at where the gaps are. But sometimes it's just little things. So it might be deciding that I'm actually going to spend 10 minutes in the morning to eat breakfast, or deciding I'm actually going to take that lunch break that I'm entitled to. And I think the thing is, everyone's schedule is really unique, and it's looking at number one is deciding that it's important, as I said before. But the second thing is, like, what gets scheduled gets done. So if you've got to actually look at, okay, well, what's my schedule look like, and how can I actually fit this in? Like, I had one lady that I was working with, like, she's got a really busy job, and then when she gets home, it's a really crazy schedule because she's got 4 kids. And one of the things that she wanted to work on was getting more movement into her day. So we didn't say go to the gym after work for 45 minutes, because that was never going to work with her family. But what we did was, there was a park quite close to work, so she decided that she would go to the park after work. She'd do 10 minutes around the park just to decompress for the day, and then she'd go back, get in a car and go home. So when she got home, she'd had that opportunity to decompress, get in a bit of movement for herself, and then come home and be, a better mum, because she'd sort of had some time to decompress between the craziness of work and the craziness that she was working into. So a lot of it is about looking at your schedule and then figuring out, how can I actually make this fit into my schedule? So that's the important thing, is what's a priority and how am I going to actually make this work in my schedule, and then scheduling it in. I think the other thing too is having boundaries. Like, people often will put things into their diary and then they'll get busy at work, something comes into their inbox, they think, I'll just finish this, and then of course they get caught in that trap, and then suddenly it's too late. They miss that gym class or whatever they were going to go to, or then they get too tired because, they've stayed at work too late. So I think a big thing is protecting that time and making it like it's an appointment with yourself that, you're not going to drop as if it was an appointment with a doctor or something. So sticking and having those boundaries is really important. And sometimes it might be asking for support. So again, it might be asking your partner to look after the kids or to start dinner so that you can go and do the things that are important to you. So it's not just about scheduling it in, it's also about making sure that you've got the support mechanisms in place that can enable you to do it, but also that it fits. I see a lot of people trying to do things that don't fit around their lifestyle. And I think when you can learn how to do that, that's how you can kind of build it in and it does become a habit.
Yeah, that's such good advice. I reckon that all of us could use some quiet time as well.
Mm.
Just even if it's 10 minutes, just to really reflect, or maybe not even reflect, to be honest. Like if you just sat alone for 10 minutes, 15 minutes, and you just didn't think about anything, you cleared your head, it would do
Mm.
us so much good. I feel like it's so underrated, and I feel like people should really get on that as well. And yeah, that's really good advice as well for irregular schedules. And
Mm.
I feel like I used to be one of those people who just kept trying to fit in like a yoga class or Pilates class, where I just could not go for one. I just did not have the energy to do that. So that's definitely a lesson for past me, that and sometimes I do feel bad. I do feel really guilty about not maintaining these classes that I really wanted to go to.
Mm.
But with your advice, I feel like that guilt's a bit alleviated now, knowing that what I was doing was trying to make sure that I was doing things. I was planning to do things that actually fit into my schedule and my lifestyle. Um,
Can I just
yeah.
add something there? Because I think that's something that I find for a lot of people, the irregular schedule. Like a lot of people say, oh, it'll be fine once this is over and I get in a routine. But I think the thing that I've really found over the years is that you can be in a routine for a bit, but routines change all the time. Like, for example, a mum goes great when the routine is the kids are at school, but then it's school holidays, 4 times a year. Or I had a client the other day and she said the whole week fell apart because the kids stayed home sick. Like she had a plan and then that went out the window. Or for people who might do FIFO work or whatever it is, like I think if we are always waiting for things to be in a routine, then we're going to come unstuck because the unexpected always happens. So one of the things that I talk to people about is trying to build the consistency in with the flexibility that the routine doesn't matter. And I talk to people about having more of a rhythm than necessarily a fixed routine. So just to give you an example for myself, I have a rhythm for my exercise of, how many times I do PT, my swims and something else that I do. So for me, instead of saying the routine is I always have to swim on this day at this time, I always look at my week and I either swim on Wednesday or Thursday or Saturday or Sunday. And every week I look at my week and look at, okay, what's happening this week? And I schedule it in depending on what's happening for the week. And I think that having that sort of degree of flexibility means that if it doesn't happen on one day, we can make sure that it happens on the next day. So sometimes it's the activity that you're trying to do doesn't fit in. I had one lady said, I love going to the gym, but the fact I had to get in my car and drive there, it was just one step too many for me. So it's thinking, so maybe it's if you've got some, equipment at home, you might decide that you want to do a home workout, and again, there's different factors there. Some people will do that, other people won't. But I think the thing is, if you've got an irregular schedule, learning how to aim for consistency in doing the things that you want to do. So maybe setting that goal, I want to do yoga twice a week. Okay, great. Let's look at the week. Let's figure out when we're putting the yoga in this week. I'm the same with meal planning and meal prepping. I always schedule that in on the weekend. It could be at any time on the weekend, but the consistency is that I always do my meal planning and grocery shopping on the weekend. So that sort of flexibility for some people might allow them to be able to build that consistency without necessarily needing to be in a routine that's going to make it challenging for them to be able to fulfill it all the time.
Yeah, I have to say that's a really good way of approaching it, and it will certainly be less discouraging for people.
when having that flexibility, and if let's say they aren't able to do it on a certain day that they wanted to do it on, this they're not going to be as discouraged, they're not going to be to feel as guilty. They know that they can do it on another day as long as they keep it consistent. So yeah, that's such great advice. Thank you so much for sharing that. My last question for you is, what advice do you have for those who struggle to find the motivation to pursue their health amidst competing demands?
Motivation is, again, a big thing that can stop people from doing something. So a little bit like I said before is if you haven't got the motivation to do it, maybe you just haven't decided it's important enough to you yet. So the first thing that I do with people is think about, what's life looking like right now and what would you love it to look like? Because when we can start to think about, what would I really like how would I love to be feeling in my body, and what would I like to be happening on a day-to-day basis, that's when sometimes you can really unlock what is going to be the key to get someone motivated. Like I've actually got a client I'm working with at the moment, and we've been working on trying to build more movement into her routine. And it sometimes with motivation, people will start out, but it needs that, sometimes that big thing that's going to make someone go, okay, do you know what? Like, it's time. Unfortunately, that's often the thing. So she's going on a big holiday to Europe. Her husband's very fit and she wants to be able to make sure she can keep up with him. So it was only after a weekend away where she had to be on her feet for a couple of days because of what she was doing that she realized, oh my gosh, like, I really need to get this knee sorted out. I need to build up this movement or I'm not going to be able to keep up with my husband when we go on this trip. And so then she was ready. Now she's decided, you know what, this is important enough to me now. And so her commitment yesterday was that she's trying to get herself back on this Peloton bike that she's got at home. And in the end, it wasn't happening for her. And it was, you know what, I need the accountability of going to a personal trainer. So we unlocked the fact that she used to love going to the gym and having a personal trainer for the accountability, but for the variety. And so, when her why was big enough, which was, my knee is not going to hold out for Europe, I need to do something, then she was motivated to go and do it. So I think the first thing is finding out, what's your why? Like, what is going to be the thing that's going to make this worthwhile for your time? And then the second thing is thinking, how can we try and make this thing fun and enjoyable? Like, sometimes people are trying to do things that are a grind and don't fit in with their lifestyle. So thinking, how can we actually, like, again, movement often is the one that comes to mind, but how could we make, what's the sort of stuff you used to enjoy doing, or what would make it more fun? If it's walking near the ocean or doing it with a friend or having a coffee afterwards, it's thinking, if we can make the thing more fun, we're more likely to do it. And it's also about making it simple and something that's going to fit into our routine. But I think even if there's not like, sometimes people start things and they're not necessarily excited about doing it. If we start small and we just link it to a habit we're already doing, like I've got a few clients at the moment where stress is something that we're really working on, and a number of them thought they were open to trying journaling. So we just said, okay, let's just start small. Let's just see how it goes. If it doesn't work, let's be willing to change it. So it's not you do it that first time and go, oh, that didn't work. I don't feel relaxed and we throw it out the window. It's about sticking with something and just trying different things until you've given it a good go and either decide that maybe it's not for you, or you find the way that then makes it more enjoyable and makes it work for you.
Thank you so much for sharing all of that with us. That was fantastic advice. And hopefully I will be able to implement some of that in my own life myself. I learned so, so much. Very, very hopeful now after talking with you. Now we're moving on to the practices and habits section. This is where we ask you a bit more about the everyday application of what you've just shared with us. And my first question for you is, what is a habit that you recommend practicing to prioritize our health amidst competing priorities?
So, I mean, I've got some habits that I recommend for everyone, but I think also too, it's figuring out what is the most important priority for you right now. So I could certainly share some habits that could be helpful for people, but I think one of the things I like working with my clients is thinking, okay, what's going to be the biggest needle mover for you right now? And then how can we actually build that into your day? Because again, sometimes people have got lots of things that they might want to change, lots of habits they might like to implement, but I always just get people to start with one thing, because when we've got too much on our plate, if we just try and add more in terms of all these new things that we want to change, people aren't going to do it. So I always get, most people know deep down, if you ask them to really think about it, what do you feel is going to be the biggest needle mover for you right now? So I had one client, for example, where she knew she wasn't exercising, she wasn't eating well, she wasn't getting enough sleep, stress was through the roof. And when we looked at it, the one thing that she decided she really needed to work on the most was building a better habit around her nighttime routine and actually prioritizing getting more sleep. So she'd fallen into a habit of getting home late, getting the dinner for the kids, and then turning back her laptop on. And then because she was working, she'd then watch Netflix to try and unwind and wasn't going to bed until midnight. And then trying to get up at 5 a.m. to go for a walk. And, of course, that wasn't happening because she was tired. And so what we did was we got her to start to change that evening routine, where she actually she decided, my goal is to go to bed by 10:30. So then we mapped out, what are you going to do before bed to help you to unwind that doesn't involve work and Netflix? So yes, if she wants to do some work, maybe we just creep back the time that she stopped the work. We built in some different habits, such as breathing, such as listening to some music. Like I always say to people, what feels right for you? Because what might feel right for one person might not feel right for another. So even just some simple breathing practices was a great habit for her before bed. Spending some time reading just to help her to relax. Some people love to journal. That might be meditation, but building a few habits in before she actually went to bed that helped her to relax and unwind before she went to bed. And it's amazing how by starting with one thing and building in some little habits in a routine or a ritual before bed, she slept better. She was able to wake up feeling refreshed, that she could get out of bed and go and do the exercise. And when she was exercising, she felt more motivated to eat better. So it's amazing how sometimes when we start with one thing, it can have that flow-on effect to other things. So really, when it comes to the competing priorities, it's start with a thing that you feel is going to be the biggest needle mover for you. We have to start small, and we need to get a win. Like we're wired to keep doing things that make us feel good. So if you go, yay, I actually did, whatever it was, whether it was, yay, I ate breakfast and I actually did have more energy through the day, or yay, I did get up and go and do that 10 minutes and I actually feel more pumped, to get through the day, whatever it is, we need to start small. We need to get that feeling of winning, because when we feel like that, we're going to be more motivated to keep doing it. And then that builds that momentum to keep going.
Yeah, thank you so much for sharing that. That was a fantastic example, and really illustrates the transformative power of just starting with one habit and making sure that aligns with your priorities and your lifestyle as well. So now we're moving on to the open mic section, and this is your chance to talk about anything that you're passionate about. It doesn't have to be related to the topic. So the floor is yours, Sharon. Please take it away.
I think one of the things that I'm really passionate about and helping people to get change is we often have good intentions, but if we don't actually figure out how we're going to do it, then it doesn't ever become a reality. So for any change that you might be wanting to make in your life, one of the things I'd say is really spend the time to think about, how am I actually going to make this happen? What is it I need to do? When am I going to do it? Where am I going to do it? So just going back to this example of the ladies that had said they wanted to try journaling, for example. We need to build it into a habit. And if we can link it into something, a habit we've already got, then even better, because we're more likely to do it. So when they said they wanted to do more journaling, it was like, okay, great. Well, what's the first step? Do you have a journal? Do you need to go out and buy a journal? And if you've got it, when you sit down to do that journaling, what are you going to do? Do you need music? Do you know what you're just going to pick up the pen and start writing? Would it be helpful to have some journal prompts? I was like, oh, yeah, okay. Maybe I need some tips or need to learn some things about this. And then it was thinking about, when are you going to do it? And that's it, in the evening. I said, okay, so is that after you've done the dishes? Is it, you're going to do it in bed? Is it before you brush your teeth? So even something like in the evening seemed clear, but it was about getting really crystal clear. So is it before I brush my teeth? Is it after I brush my teeth? I actually had one client who said, I'm going to do it after I brush my teeth when I get in bed. And she said, it's not working. I'm too tired. I fall asleep. So we changed it and we made it before she brushed her teeth. So even just these little things are really important to actually map out how you're going to go from having that good intention to actually getting that habit into practice. The other thing, I think, two big things I would say is making sure we get the right support around us as well, whether that's someone to send you some journal prompts. It might be asking your partner to give you that 5 minutes, that 10 minutes, whatever time that you want, where you can have that time for yourself. Or if it's to look after the kids or get dinner on, support is really, really important for making any changes. It might even be support at work that I need to leave earlier on this day or whatever it is. But then the other really big one is accountability. And I think people forget to factor that in. We think that the motivation is going to be enough to hold us accountable. So with any change, it's thinking about, okay, how am I going to hold myself accountable for this? So it might be, yes, that client I talked about who had been trying to get herself to exercise at home. It was about maybe the accountability of going to a personal trainer or an exercise class, or even sometimes it's just the accountability of doing it with a friend or asking the family, right, I've promised myself I'm doing this. You need to ask me when I get home, did I do that? Is it a habit tracker? It's a simple thing, but I love habit trackers. Other people love technology to track, but accountability is often, again, where I see people fall down. So if you're planning to make any change, think about, really, how am I going to make this happen? When am I doing it? Where am I doing it? What support do I need to make this happen? And how am I going to hold myself accountable? Or what accountability structures do I need to set up around this to actually help me to make sure that I do it?
Yeah, I've actually seen quite a few people post on social media about their whatever health habits just to hold
Yeah.
themselves accountable. Is that a good idea, do you think?
I think whatever works for you. This is one thing that I really think is important. Like, we often are so busy looking at what everyone else is doing, and everyone's life's different. We have different lifestyles, different preferences even for certain things. And when we're trying to copy and do things that other people are doing, then it doesn't work. So think about, what do I want to do? Like, what works for me? And if some people love printing off a habit tracker and ticking off boxes on the fridge, fantastic. If someone wants to post it on social media and tell all their friends what they're doing and get all the likes and comments, brilliant. It's about doing, I think, what works for you, not, and if what someone else is doing inspires you, awesome. That's fantastic.
Right.
But
Yeah.
figure out what works for you, because we're often trying to copy things other people are doing that just may not fit our lifestyle, our personality, and so on.
Right. Okay. If I may try and apply this to my life now with the accountability factor, because everything else, I don't think we have the time for that. But as far as accountability goes, I don't think a piece of paper is going to hold me accountable at all. I'm very good at ignoring things. So the piece of paper I'm probably going to forget about and just look away from it. It's just another thing in my house that I don't need
Yeah.
to look at. So what I would probably do is tell my partner about it or my parents about it. And I don't want to disappoint my parents. I don't want to disappoint my parents. So that's going to probably keep me accountable. What do
Yeah,
you think?
absolutely. And I think but have it as a proper conversation, not because people just sort of do it this way, oh, you got to hold me accountable, but they're sort of, just offhand about it. But if you say to them, like, this is something that I really want to work on, it would really help me if when I get home, you can ask me, did I do it? Or if, like, a lot of people do it with exercise, they'll say to their partner, okay, I've decided I'm getting up and I'm going to yoga in the morning, or I'm going for a walk. And you say, if I'm still in bed at 6:15, can you give me a nudge to get me out of bed? Whatever it is
Yeah.
that you need to do. But have the conversation. But I think explain to someone why it's important to you, because I think if they can see that you're taking it seriously and it's important to you, and and ask for their support, like to say, like, it would be really helpful to have your support, but also tell them, what does that support look like? Is it nudging me out of bed, or is it when I get home, asking me, did you get to the gym today, Marie? Or is it, did you put your veggies on your plate first before you put everything else? Or is it okay to leave the food on my plate? Just make sure or is it, if you see me going into the freezer for the ice cream, just ask me, is that in line with the goal that you've set for yourself right now? So it's letting people know what support you need and how they can actually support you. I think that's a really important part of the conversation when you're talking to someone about accountability.
Yeah. Thank you so much for sharing all of that with us today. I feel like I said before, I think I've said this too many times now. I learned so much from you, from every aspect of how to incorporate health habits into our hectic schedule. So thank you for joining us today. It was such a pleasure talking to you. Now, if our listeners want to find out more about you and what you do, where can they go?
So I've got a website, so Sharon at SharonGleeson.com. I'm on Instagram and Facebook just under Sharon Gleeson. So would love to, and on LinkedIn. So would love to chat with anyone if they've got any questions following on from today.
Amazing. We'll link those in the show notes. And before you go, Sharon, do you have anything else to say to our listeners?
I heard you say a word that a lot of people say to me is knowing. So you said, most of us know what to do, and I call it the knowing doing gap. And really what I would say to you is, if you, deep down we do know what we should be doing, but if you're not doing it, I'd ask yourself two things. One is, have I really decided that it's important enough to me? And have I figured out how to actually make this happen in my unique lifestyle? So they're the two things I think. If you've got that knowing doing gap, ask yourself, is it important enough to me, and how can I actually fit this into my lifestyle?
Thank you once again for sharing all of that. And thank you everyone for tuning into Self-Improvement Atlas, the Personal Science Insights podcast. And we'll catch you in the next episode.
Thanks, Marie.
You've been listening to the Self-Improvement Atlas, the Personal Science Insights podcast, produced by LMSL, the Life Management Science Labs. For more episodes like this from 10 different life management perspectives, search LMSL on YouTube, Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, and Spotify, or wherever you listen to podcasts, so you can get updated on everything we have to offer. We have a wide range of topics readily available for you to check out. If you enjoyed this episode, please consider rating our show, sharing it, and subscribing to our channel, as it helps us grow and bring you more quality resources. More of our work can be found on our website at pe.lmsl.net, where you can join our movement. I'm Marie Stella. Thanks for tuning in.